All right, so welcome back to Law and Crypto. My name is William Krause. I'm an attorney focusing on litigation, governmental investigations, and other disputes related to digital assets and blockchain technology. As always, this is your friendly reminder before we get started that while I'm a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. So anything I take or say should not be taken as legal advice regarding your specific situation or investment advice of any sort. I also need to make clear that everything I say is my personal opinion as opposed to the opinion of my law firm. My comments are being offered for discussion and entertainment purposes only. This also could be considered attorney advertising in some states. So if you do want my legal opinion on a specific issue, please feel free to contact me, and see about possibly working together. I also invite you to follow me on Twitter at wkraus.esq. So with that out of the way, let's start our discussion. So today I'm going to talk about two interesting things since we last spoke. First, a hiring announcement by the SEC. Hear me out on that one, why a hiring announcement might be interesting. And second, an executive order by the governor of California. And what do they have in common? Well, as I'll explain, they're both about turf wars. So let's talk about the SEC first. So in the last episode, we discussed the traditional analysis for determining whether a given digital asset might be considered an investment contract and therefore security under U.S. law. I also spoke a little bit about the SEC's approach to enforcement in this area, noting that they tend to focus on sort of high-profile cases or high-risk areas like ICOs back in 2017, really sort of in an effort to get the most bang for the buck or to maximize their impact in the space. As I mentioned during that episode, this really just reflects the fact that, like any other agency, the SEC only has so many attorneys, so much time, and so much money they can dedicate to prosecuting crypto cases. Well, I certainly didn't plan it this way. Just last week, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler announced that they were nearly doubling the size of the Division of Enforcement's crypto asset and cyber unit, adding 20 new positions to bring the group to about 50 dedicated attorneys, investigative attorneys, fraud analysts, etc. So I'll put the announcement up here. There you go. So here's a copy of the press release. If you haven't seen it, you want to take a look. But for our purposes, it's worth noting that the unit, which is formerly known as the cyber unit, has been around since 2017. And as discussed herein, it's brought about 80 enforcement actions related to fraudulent unregistered offerings and platforms and brought in about $2 billion in penalties. So no big surprises here, but I think there's a few things which are worth noting. The stated focus is crypto asset offerings, and side note, they're saying crypto asset as opposed to just cryptocurrencies, meaning that they're going to look broadly, at things like NFTs, et cetera, digital asset exchanges, digital asset lending and staking products, DeFi platforms, and NFTs. Yep, NFTs can be securities as well, and of course, stable coins, which of course, we've been paying attention or listening to this. Well, on crypto episodes, that's sort of a huge area of interest right now. So why should you care? Well, I think this is notable for a few reasons. First, and this is obvious, the SEC only has an annual budget that they use to staff new positions, et cetera, of so much. And by announcing these hires, they certainly feel that digital assets are enough of a priority as to dedicate a significant amount of money towards the creation of 20 new positions, necessarily redirecting that from other aspects of their budget. And while adding 20 new positions to one unit might not seem like a lot, you need to recognize that the SEC generally tries to add about 10 division of enforcement positions each year, and that's across all the sort of subunits, right? So like market abuse, asset management, et cetera. This is not all of division enforcement, this is just one of several units. So to say we're going to send 20 just to this one as opposed to 10 for sort of the entire division is pretty significant. It's kind of like a police department saying, we're going to go and double, our hiring for the entire year. We're going to send everybody to just, be traffic cops or something like that. So that's really a recognition this is a major priority. In short, or second, other observers have been pointing this out, but these positions are not really going to try to sit around and they're going to try to figure out good crypto policy or put together written guidance that will help people in the industry figure out how to comply with the securities law. Rather, what the Division of Enforcement does is detect and investigate potential violations of the securities laws and regulations, obtaining court orders like injunctions, working on settlements, and occasionally bringing civil lawsuits like SEC versus Ripple. And that's disappointing to a lot of people, myself included. Specifically, the hope was that with the Biden EO and sort of this directive that agencies like the SEC start to try to craft a cohesive whole government approach to crypto, the SEC would try to focus on developing policy. not just bringing lawsuits. And there's a name for that, right? We call that regulation by enforcement, which basically means that rather than focusing on creating new written regulations, the SEC has long, had a reputation for bringing investigations and court actions first, even where the rules don't specifically address the particular investment or conduct at issue. They then use that language that they get in settlements or other orders to kind of show what the rules of the road are. And lo and behold, that's exactly what SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce is pointing out here. Now, here she says the SEC is a regulatory agency with an enforcement division, not an enforcement agency. Why are we leading with enforcement by crypto or in crypto? And there she's talking about, of course, regulation by enforcement. So, there's been some good comments here. Commissioner Peirce has made as well as others, and it's basically saying we think it would make more sense for the SEC to work out a solid regulatory framework by NEO, and then use the staff they already have to bring actions against the truly bad actors in this space, right? Like the folks mining fraudulent ICOs and the like. So what's going on here? Well, it's tough for me to say for sure, but I've spoken in previous episodes about all the ways we're trying to figure out who regulates what, right? Like is it the SEC, the CFTC, somebody else? And this is a big deal with a bunch of competing considerations. I mean, for example, you have to, this hope out there that the agencies will sort of cooperate in figuring it out and, sort of work out the lines of who regulates what based on the traditional authority. And I think that's really the spirit of the Biden NEO. But at the same time, you have this legislation coming out all the time where representatives or senators are trying to draw the lines as well. I've spoken a little bit about that in the past. I mentioned the Token Taxonomy Act for 2020, and then just a couple of weeks ago, the Stablecoin Trust Act, which would have, for example, exempted stablecoins from SEC oversight. And you sort of got these congressional committees as well, which are writing letters, and they're trying to announce hearings and sort of, shoulder in what their position should be or their authority over various aspects of crypto. And then finally, you have the CFTC and the SEC, both of which are signaling that they think they should have the most authority over crypto, with more authority, of course, meaning more attorneys, the ability to bring in more fines and bigger budgets. So in short, what we might be seeing here is a good old fashioned turf war. And in some respects, the SEC is simply bringing in 20 new soldiers. So let's pivot then to California. So last week we heard about California Governor Gavin Newsom signing an executive order aimed at establishing regulatory guidelines around crypto. And in other words, fostering responsible innovation. So, we got this right here, foster responsible innovation. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should, because we talked about this not too long ago. Like I said in my first episode discussing the Biden NEO, entitled Ensuring Responsible Development of Digital Assets, that was really sort of the heading and I think the overall theme of the Biden executive order, right? It was saying that the U.S. wants to be a regulatory hub, for, the guidelines around crypto, but at the same time to draw in business, investment, entrepreneurs, and really sort of be the leader internationally in crypto. So let's go back to California. And California is kind of trying to do the same thing. In fact, they expressly say here the executive order builds on President Biden's recent actions. And, they've got this quote, California is a global hub of innovation, and we're, setting up the state for success with this emerging technology, spurring responsible innovation, protecting consumers, and leveraging the technology for the public good. And in other words, I think California is just saying that, like, the state is the heart of the tech industry, right? With like Apple, Google, everybody in Silicon Valley, they want to be the same thing with regard to crypto. And just like the Biden NEO, I think this is a recognition that crypto is here to stay. It's growing every day, and that in the United States or California, for that matter, want to be relevant in this space and capture that investment, they need to figure out regulation in a way that doesn't crush the industry. And I think that's an important point, right? Like I said, with the Biden NEO, you cannot be a global hub for investment, entrepreneurs, and have all the people who want to do crypto projects and big crypto projects come to the United States and absolutely crush the industry. California's got the same issue. And conversely, you look at a state like New York, right, which recently announced their sort of ban on certain aspects of crypto mining and, sort of having the bit license regime and things like that, that would have the sort of inverse effect, right? By having regulations which are deemed, sort of oppressive to the industry, it's not exactly going to be great for attracting new investment. Other states are keen to this, right? And they want to sort of hop into that space, come to our state. And, we've seen this, right? We mentioned New York and we also have Miami, and they're trying to be sort of crypto hubs, but then you have Texas. and they're very attractive for mining for a number of reasons. You have Wyoming, which is doing some really cool things with regard to, clarifying sort of corporate guidance around DAOs and bank charter stuff. And what's this all boil down to? That again, turf war, right? Turf war here between states that are trying to become the hub for crypto investment to try to bring those dollars to their borders and try to give regulatory guidance and be a welcoming environment for crypto businesses. So that's what I got for you. Crypto turf wars on two fronts. One, with regard to the SEC versus the CFTC versus, Congress, and Senate and all the sort of competing federal agencies that are trying to stake out their jurisdiction. And then a crypto turf war between the various states, which are trying to become the next sort of crypto hub in the US. So King might mention this. I'll be transitioning to an every other week schedule from now forward, or at least for a while. And that's what I got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed our chat, and I look forward to speaking with you again in 2 weeks. All right, thanks.